Hello, everyone. Today I wanted to sort of peel back the curtain a bit and show you one of the most useful tools we use for almost all of our major builds here on the Mythos SMP, that of course being the Litematica mod. This is the tool we use to build pretty much all of these. Uh-oh. That was unexpected. Anyways, this is a tool we use for pretty much all these massive builds and projects, like our server iron farm that I'm at right now, or the gold farm that you saw me building in an earlier video, or on a less technical and more just aesthetic point, I think Loban's just going for all the different deaths they can. But anyways, on a more like just aesthetic point, not even technical, even this Nether hub that was designed by Square Ladybug. All of these are massive builds and projects that are made considerably easier and less time consuming thanks to the Litematica mod. However, every time I pull out these menus and these windows and you see them, it probably looks really overwhelming. And if you were to open it yourself with no clue what you're doing, it would feel very overwhelming. I know that it did for me my first time. So in this video, I wanted to give a practical beginner's guide, enough to get you, your friends, and anybody else really to be able to build some real schematics in survival without feeling completely lost. We'll start with some of the keybinds and settings I use and like to change as soon as I have to update Litematica and reset everything. And then I'll show you how to load and place schematics, gather the right materials, build a bit more efficiently in survival, paste your schematics into a creative world for testing when it comes to more technical builds like the farms I've shown off, as well as create and edit your own schematics to make builds easier. So all that being said, let's hop into a creative world where I can showcase some of this stuff and get started. So the first thing we need to go over is how to open the Litematica mod menu. And it is by default bound to your M key, and that should pull up a menu like this. If you press your M key and nothing happens or a different screen pops up, it is probably being used by a different mod, or you have something else bound to it as well, which is overriding it. For example, for me, whenever I have to update my Zeros world map, the world map button is bound to that M key, and so instead it'll pull up my world map. But this is very easily fixed just by coming into there and rebinding that setting to something else, and now we can open Litematica. And so before we start placing schematics, there are a couple of setup changes and settings that I recommend looking at. The first of which is going to be your tool item. And by default, Litematica uses a stick as a tool you use to interact with schematics and the Litematica mod, but you probably carry around lots of sticks all the time, which makes it very easy to accidentally click something and wonder why Litematica is suddenly doing something, why there's all of a sudden a schematic right in front of you, or just something weird is going on with your world. And so I like to instead change a tool item to something that I rarely, if ever, carry on me, but can still very easily craft so that when I need it, I can pull it out. For me, that's the wooden axe. This is also consistent with other mods like World Edit and the default tool they use, and so it's also very handy for that purpose and just keeping consistency across mods. And so to change it is very simple. You just need to come into this menu. Under the generic options, you can either scroll through and look for it, or just in the search bar type in tool, find your tool item, and type in whatever you want. It can be a wooden axe, it can be, if you really want, a diamond hoe, whatever you think will be easiest for you. The next thing I wanted to look at is under visuals, and this is the render blocks as translucent. This will make schematic blocks appear as translucent ghost blocks, which makes it much easier, especially when you are just starting, to see what you're working on. You can more easily differentiate between blocks you've already placed and blocks you still need to place, and your progress on the build by turning it to true. As I've gotten more experience with it, I've kept it off, but there are definitely times where it comes in handy. The final thing is looking at the layer building hotkeys. By default, these are bound to page up and page down. And these are very useful when you are building layer by layer, which is something we will cover here in a bit. For me, I prefer to have them set to button 5 for the next layer and button 4 on the previous layer, which are my mouse side buttons. When you're building layers, massive farms, massive projects, everything becomes much easier. Like I said, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But for now, let's talk about loading our first schematic. And for this, I have a simple cobblestone farm designed by Big Booty 17 that we will be looking at. And so an important thing to note is that Litematica will only access schematic files that are stored in the right folder, and this is your schematics folder. When you install the Litematica mod, it will automatically create this folder, and you will just have to move any schematic files into it manually. It is installed in your .minecraft folder. So to load a schematic, it's very simple as you've seen. Open your menu with M, load schematics, choose one you want to load up, select it, press load schematic, and this create a placement option will be checked by default. If you uncheck it, it will just simply load it without actually placing it, and then you can create a placement from your loaded schematics options. But it's pretty easy if you just have placement created when you load it, and then from here you can move it. So you see this ghost build. As of now, Litematica has not placed anything into the world. You have not placed anything. This is just a bunch of ghost blocks. You can run and fly through them, and they don't actually exist yet. This is just simply telling you what to build and where. But you may not want it in this specific spot. Maybe you're living out in this village, and to get to your cobblestone generator, you don't want to go all that distance. Maybe you've commandeered this house, and you'd rather have your cobblestone generator right in front of it, so that when you need to run it, you can just walk outside your house, turn it on, go back inside and do whatever, go down into your mine, whatever. And so there's a couple different ways to change where a schematic is placed in the world. The first is grabbing your tool item, and then you can just simply left click or right click to move it around and kind of eyeball it, and you'll see that this lets it go pretty much wherever at whatever block you are looking at, no matter how far away it is, you can move a placement really far away. And when it's a smaller build like this, that is typically one of just the best and easiest ways to do it. But especially when you get into larger builds, you're going to want to actually come into your menu under schematic placements, find the schematic you are trying to move. Under configure, you have these options to move it. And you can first get it roughly where you might want it using this move to player option. And then from there, you can kind of adjust it along the X, Y, and Z axes with these buttons. Left click for positive, right click to decrease as it says there. And then you can also press Shift while right or left clicking to move it in increments of 8, or your Alt key to move it in increments of 4. So now that we have it placed roughly where we want it, it's time to build, kind of, but there is one step before that first even. And that is going to be gathering your materials. And Litematica has a wonderful feature to make this easier, rather than just having to like look at this and memorize, okay, I need 12 hoppers. Are there any hoppers up here? No. Okay, cool. So 12 hoppers, 12 cobblestone. Yeah. Instead, you can just simply, under your schematic placement, configure, and here you'll see material list. And here it lists out everything you need. You can take a screenshot of this and, open that screenshot on another screen, another monitor, or you can write it to a file, to a CSV file, so that you can then open that up on another screen, or even send it to a friend and be like, hey, I need help. Can you gather these materials for me? The feature I really enjoy here, I want to highlight, is the Info HUD. And what this essentially does is puts this little sort of grocery shopping list here on the bottom right corner of your screen that updates as your inventory updates. So like we can see right here, it says I need 2 observers. And if I get just 1 observer, it will now say, oh, you need 1 more observer. And I go, okay, cool. Here's a 2nd observer. And it's now gone from the grocery list because I've checked it off. I'm done. I don't need any more observers. And I need 3 pistons. 1, 2, 3. And this even will extend into shulker boxes that you have in your inventory. While you have the shulker box placed, it can't read the contents of that shulker box, obviously. But the second I pick up this shulker box and it is in my inventory, you will see that all the items in this shulker box are read as in my inventory and checked off of the material list. So that is a very handy feature that can save a lot of time, because you can then just in one go transport all the materials you need to your build site and not have to waste a bunch of time going back and forth between build site, your base, build site, your base, and your storage, back and forth over and over. And so now at this point, we have our materials, we have our schematic placed, we're ready to start actually building. And my biggest tip for this, let's clear the Info HUD. My biggest tip for this is do not try and build the entire schematic at once. It can be very difficult to see everything going on in the middle of this, and just for a good example, you can kind of see right here, there is a smooth stone block that's supposed to go right here. It can be very hard to see that at first glance if you're trying to look at everything. But if we come in here to our render layers, there are a lot of different options. And first you have all, which lets you see the entire schematic. Single layer, where you will just see little slices of the schematic layer by layer. Layer range, where you can dictate, hey, I only want to see this section and then that section. All below, which is my preferred version, so we're going to get to it in a bit. Or all above if you want to build from the top down for some reason. Like I said, I prefer all below because you can start right at the bottom, see everything at the bottom, and build from here, like so. And so what you'll see is that as you build, you might see a couple of different colors. You can see at the very start, everything is blue. It has a sort of blue outline to it, and that just indicates, hey, you're missing a block here. Litematica shows you what that block is supposed to be, outlines it in blue to show it is missing. Another color you might see is this sort of red overlay to a block you have placed. That is Litematica telling you, hey, you've placed the completely wrong block here. You need to change this block. Another color you might see, and you saw a bit as I was building here with these chests, is this sort of orange overlay. And what that is telling you is you have the right block, but it is in the wrong state. For example, this chest here is supposed to be a double chest. This hopper, it is currently pointed into this hopper, but it needs to be pointed into the chest. And one thing that Litematica does that's very helpful is you can see in my top right corner right now, as I'm hovering over this block, it shows me as I work on the schematic and I place my blocks, what is in the schematic, what is expected to be there, and what I actually have, what is on my client. And so like I was saying, this hopper in the schematic, it is facing north, but I've placed it facing west. So if we come here, face north, and place it, it is no longer orange. And so whenever you see orange, that is one of the first places you should look, is at the top right corner of your screen. And then the final color overlay you'll see is this sort of pinkish purple, which just means extra block. Litematica isn't expecting there to be a block there, and you have placed a block there. Oftentimes that won't be too big of an issue, but sometimes depending on what you're building, it might. And so it's something to keep in mind. And so let's just continue building out this layer a bit. And use this opportunity to showcase another useful feature, which is the schematic verifier. By default, it is set to check the entire schematic, and so if I start verification right now, it has a ton of missing blocks because it's checking the entire schematic. I've only built one layer. But what you can do is by clicking on it, you can change the range to render layers and start verification. And this is telling me, hey, on this layer that is rendered in right now, there is nothing wrong. There are no wrong blocks, no wrong states, no extra blocks, no missing blocks. But let's say I take this hopper, I face it the wrong way, I replace this chest with a grass block, I place a block of cobblestone here, and I haven't placed that hopper yet, and now I run it. you can see it says, hey, you've got a grass block where there's supposed to be a chest. You've got a hopper facing the wrong way, a chest incorrect. You have an extra cobblestone block, and you're missing a hopper. And this becomes even more useful in bigger builds, because if I'm looking at this and this is a much bigger build, I might not be able to see all this. Right now I can very clearly see it, but on a bigger build that'll be harder to see. Some of these blocks might be covered up. But what Litematica lets me do is, let's say I'm really worried about this wrong block. Maybe I know, like, you know, this is a bunch of redstones. Like, yeah, of course, this is in the wrong state. The redstone isn't powered right now. But this wrong block, this really worries me. I can click on it, and Litematica actually highlights that and outlines that block, even when I can't see it. So that now I can come over here and say, oh, hey, you know, if this is deep in my build, I can see, okay, I need to get into this section of my build, break that block, and replace it. You know, hey, I need, you know, oh, wrong button. I need to get into this part of my build, find this hopper, break it, replace it. I need to place an extra hopper there. I need to break this cobblestone. Very simple, very easy, and it makes everything so much faster, because there's nothing worse than spending hours on a massive farm or a massive build, mostly massive farm. You try to run it, and then it just breaks. It destroys itself, or it doesn't work, and you have no clue why. This also helps for figuring that out sometimes depending on the farm. You run it and it breaks in such a way that Schematic Verifier isn't going to tell you anything. But sometimes, especially if you run it before starting the farm, it can point out potential problems well before they happen. So now, for the next part, let's load in the entire schematic, all layers, and talk about pasting a schematic. A very important note is that paste mode only exists and only works in creative mode. If you're in survival mode, you will not have access to it. And to get into it, you pull out your tool item, hold it in your main hand, and then the default is left control. For me, that is also my crouch key, so I have to crouch, and then scroll on your mouse wheel. And as I do this, you'll see that in the bottom left corner of my screen, there's all these different options. Everything's changing. You know, we're in mode 1, area selection, mode 2, schematic placement, mode 3, fill. We're going to scroll to mode 5, paste schematic in world. From here, we have another hotkey we need to set up. But first, I just want to show you that this, you cannot even get into this while in survival mode. It works if you change into survival mode while you're in creative with it, but the second I scroll out, it disappears. It automatically skips over that paste schematic option. So from here, we are going to set up another hotkey, and that is the execute operation hotkey. To execute whatever your currently selected tool operation is. For our purposes right now, that is pasting the schematic. Default, it is unbound. There is no key bound for it. I just choose backslash as one that I can very easily remember. And so now when I press my backslash key, you'll see it automatically just creates this entire schematic for me as an actual build. And now I am free to test this and make sure that it works before going into survival mode onto my server and building it for real. This is especially important because of how Minecraft updates. Some farms and some builds might not work between updates. You might have a farm that you built that was designed in version 1.16 or 1.18 and now in 1.21, it won't work anymore because of something that Mojang changed. And also sometimes you might have like a creative copy of your world, and you might want to see, okay, I've built this entire massive house or whatever in creative mode. How does it look in my world itself? And you can use something like this to get an idea of that before actually going into your world in survival and testing it and spending all the time building it there. So now for the coolest part is creating your own schematics. Let's say maybe you are building your own sort of custom village, for example, in your world, and you want to take some of these structures, some of these natural structures, and put them into your world where there isn't a village already. And so let's just use this house as an example. And this is very simple. We're once again going to pull out our tool item and scroll through the menu again with left control and our mouse scroll wheel. We're going to go to mode 1 out of 9, area selection. And from here, it is very simple. You're going to select the 2 corners of your selection, trying to get everything you can, making sure everything is in this box. And when, like you saw there, you might need to create some temporary blocks. That's perfectly fine. Just once you have everything you want and you are satisfied with it, I might, for my own purposes, just bring it in here. You can delete those blocks out. And there you go. You now have this entire area selected. And you can even, once again, refine it even a bit more. And you select these corners with the left and right click. So here, this corner I changed with my right click. And the other corner over here, I change its location with my left click. And so now from here, once you have the area you want to select and you're satisfied with it, you can open up your menu again, choose Area Editor, and just simply save schematic. I'm trying to just keep this very simple. We can just name this Village House, save schematic. And now out over here, I can, or on any other world, any server, I can come into here where I've saved it, load that schematic. Oh, and this is one of those reasons why I suggest not unchecking this and just keeping this box checked, because it's something that's very easy to forget you have selected. But so yes, you can load that schematic, load its placement, and you can reuse this build anywhere you want in the world, complete with villager entities, which if you don't care about them, you can just click this button and ignore entities. But now that we have this schematic, sometimes you might want to adapt it to your survival resources or a specific visual theme or aesthetic. Maybe, for example, here we're wanting kind of a darker theme, and so we might want to replace the oak wood with spruce or dark oak, and the cobblestone with cobble deep slate, or maybe we want like darker windows, or maybe these windows are dark, they're like a black glass pane, and we don't want to have to gather dye. You will want to, at some point or another, for whatever reason, edit your schematics. And so to do this, it's very simple. it is once again pulling out your tool item, and you're going to scroll to mode 9 out of 9, edit schematic. And now, with any other item or lack of item in your main hand, we can come through and by left clicking, we delete blocks. So we can maybe delete this kind of ugly overhang of dirt. Or we can place some blocks. So now we can place cobblestone by pointing at blocks in the schematic and building on top of it. And that's all fine and dandy, but like I said, maybe you are looking to replace like all of these oak logs with a dark oak. And sure, you could come in and do it like this. But, first and foremost, you run into issues like that. You might accidentally break a block you don't want to, and then you have to worry about, placing it back. There's a much quicker and easier way to do this. And that involves first setting up another hotkey. And that will be this schematic edit replace all. You can once again either scroll or just search for it. Schematic edit replace all. Like most of these hotkeys, it's not bound when you first install Litematica. Just click it, bind it to whatever you feel comfortable with. For me, that is G. I don't really know. But then what you're going to do is you are going to want to highlight the block you want to replace. And for something like logs, you want to do this in a particular order. So I'm going to first show you the wrong way to do this. The wrong way to do this with something like logs. This really only matters for directional blocks. Is just looking at this, pressing G, and then right clicking. And you can see very quickly why that was wrong. It's placed them all in the wrong direction. So in this case, we want to first break this block, and then you're going to press and hold G until you see this orange square show up, and then right click. That'll replace all the oak logs that were in that configuration with dark oak logs. And then you can just simply, place your dark oak log. And I can kind of hear you asking, why did it not replace these ones? And this actually beautifully highlights a important part of how the replacement operation works and some of its limitations. It will only replace blocks that match exactly. This includes orientation. So the logs we were replacing were oriented vertically up and down, but these ones are oriented north to south and east to west. Along the x-axis we can see for these ones, and along the z-axis for these ones. And so to replace these ones, we would have to just simply do the same thing for those ones, and that should get those ones, and there aren't any on this side. And for these ones, we can just come in here and do the same thing. And so it's very easy and a simple fix with something like logs because of that. Where it gets tricky is things with trapdoors, fences, walls, stairs, etc. All these blocks that have multiple different possible states and orientations. They can be waterlogged. They can, be connected to multiple different sides, oriented all these different ways. And so if there's lots of those, it doesn't work as well for them, and my suggestion is to honestly just get the materials you need to make those ones. But this is really handy for large amounts of glass or slabs and those sorts of things, or building blocks. For example, on the Mythos SMP, the schematic we used, my game might lag quite a bit here. So you can see the schematic we used had these red sandstone slabs. Smooth red sandstone, right? Yeah. But we didn't have a whole lot of regular or red sandstone. What we did have a lot of, thanks to the gold farm we had built and bartering through it, and also was conveniently already in the schematic, was blackstone. And so we just took this and, oh, that's wrong. And we, just like that, replaced all the polished, all the smooth red sandstone slabs with polished blackstone brick slabs. And it was a lot cleaner than that, because you can see that's led to some issues up here. But you get the general idea from there. One thing to note that this replace all function really doesn't work at all with, and it doesn't handle like at all. Not even in like a weird way that you can kind of work around and be semi-functional on, but just straight up doesn't work, are some of these blocks like beds and regular doors. You will see, because they occupy 2 blocks, and Litematica can only really operate in these 1 block spaces, if you try to use it in these situations, once again, because of orientation, but then also because of their nature as 2 blocks, the replace function just straight up doesn't work. And we now have these weird beds that are half white and half black. So that is another one where I strongly suggest, when it shows up in the material list, either just ignoring it in the schematic verifier when it comes up as red, or getting the exact color that you need. Hopefully by now you get kind of a rough idea of how to use this and how this can be helpful for you in your builds, whether that be something incredibly technical like the iron farm or gold farms we've built, other farms, or something more just decorative like this nether hub. You would be able to design this entirely in creative mode on a personal world, and then rather than having to constantly use reference screenshots or go back and forth between worlds and the server or whatever else you would do normally, you can just load a schematic and build off of that. And at this point, you should know roughly how to do that, how to set up the basic settings in the mod and how to navigate the various menus in it, how to load any schematics you might have, and quickly and efficiently figure out what supplies you need. Then build your schematic layer by layer in survival so that you can quickly and easily verify your work, layer by layer and at the very end, as well as how to paste your builds in Creative for testing, create your own schematics, and then very quickly and efficiently edit and replace blocks to either make the designs more survival friendly, fit better any sort of theme or aesthetic you might have, or for whatever reason change the schematic without actually needing to go through and recreate it entirely. And a couple of other pretty useful tools within the Litematica mod. As you can see, this is generally one of the most useful tools we use here on the Mythos SMP and on a handful of other servers. If you are not using it, I highly recommend contacting your server owner and admins and asking them if you are allowed to use it, and if so, using it. Because once you get comfortable with it, it will completely change how you approach large-scale builds and technical builds and just the game in general. If this video helped you out, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I'll definitely be making some more of the normal SMP content soon. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to drop a comment below and asking. I will try to answer any of those questions to the best of my ability. Or if there's enough of them and they get a bit detailed enough, I might just make another video like this to address them all. Oh, thanks for watching. And I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.